you doing, Tony?
I'm awesome, thank you, Joe. And yourself?
Not too bad. Running around like crazy. I'm gonna have to take off at 8 o'clock for another. So you know.
No worries. Thanks, Joe. Morning, Coralie. Morning, Vicky.
Hi.
Oh, sorry. Good evening, Vicky.
Good evening.
I should say good evening to you as well, shouldn't I, Joe?
It's good. That's all that matters to me, man. It's good.
That's awesome.
I just do it to tease Tony because I know for us it's like a 12-hour time difference, I think. It is, yeah.
At 12, it's 7:30 a.m. here.
Yeah.
It's 7:30 p.m. here. Yeah.
Well, there you go. We're opposite sides of the world, literally.
Yep. Yes. Yep.
And yet here we are.
I actually did all the reading for tonight.
Yes.
I just finished the other chapter.
Well, you notice that we started off, I think, with about 12 people, and it's dropping.
I think people got put off with the fact, like, I'm like, okay, I have to catch up. I know that. Like, I mean, I've read it, but it was like last year, so I'm like, I'll just focus on the chapters for tonight.
Yeah, good plan.
I'll let you into an admission. I read chapter 11 last night and chapter 12 first thing this morning. I was too tired to read it last night, so I'm going to get up early and read it in the morning. Like you, I've read the book a few times, but you need to refresh and go back through. And it's so fascinating. I find that I highlighted things before, and now I'm highlighting loads of extra stuff.
Well, like I said, I read it last year, so that's my cat behind me, obviously. You see that little tail moving. And reading it again now, I'm picking up on things I didn't pick up the first time, so I definitely noticed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing I want to get a copy of the book to hold in my hand, because doing the audio, I can get lost in whatever task I'm doing while it's playing, and I may not realize what chapter I'm in anymore. But it's a start. I mean, I came into this class without ever reading the book, and now I think I've listened up to chapter 23, and I came back to do 11 and 12 over again.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, Joe. I mean, most of us are visual learners. There are people who are audio learners and some who are kinesthetic learners, but the majority of people are visual. And so you can't beat having a book in your hands, I think. I mean, a Kindle does apparently.
Oh, no. I need to have the book in my hand so I can like see it and mark things and go back. And an audio would never work for me. Like I would have to listen to it like so many times to even get the chapter.
That's true, but I also add that, for instance, yesterday I was doing cleaning work. I have a cleaning business as well, and I was actually out there doing some physical work in the business, and I had my earphones on, and I was listening to a different book actually, but it's amazing when you hear it going through in your audio as well. But I still think you need to like read the book and then hear it all. Either way around, but resonate even when you're listening, even when you're doing something else and you're not really concentrating. There'll be some sentence that'll just go, I heard that.
That's true.
That's really relevant to me.
Yeah. Maybe I should do both. Then I'm like doubly reinforcing.
Absolutely. The only thing on that is if you've got a speaker on the audio book who has an annoying voice, that could be.
Oh, yes. I hate that. No. It's got to be a good voice. That's for sure.
You can always record yourself reading it and listen to that. I guess then, you like the sound of your own voice. Well, most women do anyway.
Ha ha.
Morning, Stan.
Good morning.
We like to have a bit of fun on these calls, stir a few people up.
So if you were to say that to your wife, Tony, how would that go over?
Absolutely, I would say that if she was here, and yes, I would accept the punch with gusto.
Little hand come past 20.
That's too funny.
Morning, Julie.
The only problem was I listened to it on an audio book, and they had the editor's comments on as well. And so it was like 15 hours of book, and you were like, this book is really long, and I've got the editor's comment, so it was longer.
So you should be the full bottle then, Stan. 15 hours.
Wow.
That's a lot of wealth.
Good for you.
And then I was reading the book at the same time. So then you like follow along and go, oh, I know this bit because it was on the other day.
Yeah, I think the more times you can read it, and you know, Napoleon Hill says in the book quite a few times, reread this book. You will get new things out of it. And because we're all evolving, you know, through life, and different things resonate with you at different times in your life. Very interesting. We'll come to in a moment about that men only really get their act into gear when they turn 40.
Yes, I saw that between the ages, I think it said 40 and 50, if I read that correctly.
I'm leaving it a bit
interesting.
A late rush. Okay, well, we're 5 minutes after, so I think we can get started on the formalities of things, and if anyone else joins, they can just catch up. So we will go with the Noble Goldman principles. So let's just give everybody a number. All right. So who was on first? Vicky was number 1, I think.
No, Joe was.
Oh,
let Joe go first.
Sorry,
yeah, Joe was there first. I'm being honest.
Thank you.
He looks like he might not be here though.
So
oh, that's true. Didn't he? No,
oh, there he is.
He's there.
He was just hiding. Coralie, you can go number 3. Stan, number 4.
Yeah, I'm jumping back and forth. My son doing homework, so
no worries. No
multitasking.
Julie, number 5, and I'll go number 6. There we go. We've gone from 12 people to 6. See, we're getting down to the hardcore, the committed now. The committed. All right, let's just share screen and bring that up. I'll just close this one. And there we go. Okay, so Joe, would you like to lead us off?
The purpose of the mastermind is to learn leadership, build teams, and create multiple sources of income together.
We are here to inspire and challenge each other to reach and exceed goals.
Each member is committed to their own success, as well as the success of every member of the group.
We are committed to meeting in person, and I'm poking myself in the eye, and I can't read that very well, or virtually for 1 hour every week.
We are present. There is no multitasking or distractions during meetings. That's a wee bit of a fib.
True. We are collaborative. We listen without interrupting, lecturing, or judging.
We celebrate each other's success without jealousy.
We are honest and participate by giving thoughtful feedback.
We are open and listen to different perspectives without being defensive or offering excuses.
We trust fellow members enough to share fully.
We are focused, but we, oh, sorry, I've jumped in. Julie, come on.
We are focused, but we also think it's important to have fun during meetings.
See, I wasn't being very focused there. We are real and authentic. This is a no BS zone.
We allow ourselves to become completely aligned with each other and the high forces, one mind, one soul, one love.
Noble Goldman mission statement. Noble Goldman International is a conscious, aware, and engaged global community of abundance and freedom creators.
Our mission is to create 1 million millionaires who are free from the time for money paradigm. We focus on creating multiple streams of income through masterminding, team building, and effective utilization of the internet-based platforms.
The masterminds become an opportunity for the self-mastery, where the self-transcendent shift from the me to the we to the us occurs. As congruence and engagement increases, the world's consciousness is then raised one meaningful and inspired relationship at a time.
Awesome, thank you. We've also had apologies from Kobe and Glenn, who wanted to join us this morning but have other things that they have to do. So that is the way, of course, that life does get in the way sometimes. Just on that, we had just the realization that these principles are something that we aspire to, and obviously they don't always follow. You know, I got distracted there and read the wrong sentence. I don't think I've ever had a call where somebody hasn't had some sort of distraction or something going on, like somebody's trying to get their attention, or there's kids in the background, or pets jumping on the screen, or all sorts of things. That is the modern world that we live in. The modern world that we live in, and I think that these are aspirations. Good morning, Julia. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Sorry I was a bit late.
It's all right, better late than never. So, but the early bird catches the worm, they say. So,
The second mouse gets the cheese, but
our lives are so run by all these little sayings, aren't they? Okay, so Think and Grow Rich, chapters 11 and 12 we're here for. I won't go through the whole review because I think most of you are pretty well up to date, and I think all of you were on the call last week, so when we did chapters 9 and 10. But we've got a couple of really interesting chapters here. Well, every single chapter up till now has been interesting, has it not? But chapter 11 is quite a controversial title. I mean, remember the time again that this was written? So, you know, middle-class white America, most people were churchgoers, you know, communities were had very strong principles and rules that they followed. So for someone to even talk about the subject of sex was right out there, right out of the rule book. So the mystery of sex transmutation, or as he calls it, the 10th step to riches, I think, this is just my opinion, but we could sum up the whole chapter with the one sentence that appears later in the book, or later in the chapter. Hang on, let me just admit Kim, who's just joining us as well. This one sentence that I think sums it all up is that man's greatest motivating force is his desire to please woman.
Could
Now,
you repeat that? Could you repeat that? Sorry.
okay, so towards the end of the chapter, this one sentence leapt out at me with flashing neon lights. Man's greatest motivating force.
what sort of book have you got?
Woman. Well, it's a hallucinogenic book, to be honest.
Good book now.
Yep, flashing lights, sirens, bells, whistles, the whole thing went off. You know, man's greatest motivating force is his desire to please woman. Now, ladies, I have to ask you, what is woman's greatest motivating force?
Chocolate.
No. See, I would go down a paragraph, Tony, and then there's another sentence there that I think stands out. Take a woman out of their lives and great wealth would be useless to most men.
Yes.
If this,
equally,
it says, it is this inherent desire of man to please woman, which gives woman the power to make or break a man.
yes.
Not that we, of course, would do that. None of the women here would ever do that, of course.
Wouldn't they? So isn't that interesting? I mean, you could almost sum up the whole book with that sentence. And when you look back, he goes on to give quite a few examples through history. One that particularly resonated with me was Napoleon. So I used to read a lot of books about Napoleon when I was a younger fellow. And, you know, his great love for Josephine. Now, to just add to that, he goes on to say not just sex, but there's sex, love, and romance. But the primary motivating force, I guess, when you go back to base instincts, is sex, which we'll come back to in a moment. But, you know, Napoleon his great desire was to make himself somebody in the eyes of Josephine. Josephine de Beauharnais was actually a married woman too, who he fell in love with, and he'd come from a little island of Corsica, and he was determined to be somebody. He actually saw himself, and we'll come to this on subconscious mind in a moment as well. But there's a famous picture of Napoleon in the school playground in the little island of Corsica, where he imagined himself one day being the ruler of France. Now, bear in mind that Corsica was a principality of France, so it was about as likely as someone coming from, like, given it like modern day equivalent, someone being born in Ireland and imagine himself being the king of England. So it's like a really unlikely scenario to even imagine that. And yet in 1804, he placed the crown of Emperor of France on his own head. So how powerful is that motivating force of a man trying to please a woman? Now, when you look at most of our movies, our literature, the hero's journey is very often, there's always the lady, there's always the woman who's the driving force behind the man. That old saying, behind every great man stands a greater woman. I think something like that anyway. Must have been a famous woman that wrote that one. So what is woman's greatest motivating force? And why do we have that gender difference? I mean, I get that the book was written in, what, 1938. So in that time, remember, women didn't have a vote. So it was very much a man's world. Today, we have equal opportunities, or at least in theory. I know women are still catching up on the pay scales, and that's a big area for debate. But, you know, I think more than ever previously in history, a woman can rise to the top, as we've seen in numerous examples, you know, Maggie Thatcher being ruler of England for so long, and, you know, the German Chancellor, and now we've got Jacinda in New Zealand. We did even have a female Australian Prime Minister, and yet she still copped a lot of the abuse and the, you know, the sort of the poking of fun and all that sort of thing from the rear benches of men going, oh, you know, she's just a woman, what does she know? That kind of attitude. So there's still a sort of staunch male dominant, you know, framework there that needs to be broken down. So, you know, there's a lot of talk about the glass ceiling these days, and you know, women having to keep on chipping away at it to get that parity that they deserve. But so I'm asking all you ladies on the call, what are your thoughts about what is woman's great motivating force? Is it to mold and shape their man, or is it the devotion and protection of children?
I think, yeah, that's part of it. But I think it's for the whole, you just want everyone to have everything. So it's sort of, you want your man to be happy, but you also want that for the family, for the whole family to be a unit that all work well together, be happy together. And then the broader community too. So just everything for everyone.
World peace, as they say.
Yes.
Women are such multitaskers. The difference, because men can only think in one dimension, apparently. Do one thing at a time.
That's a great falsity, Tony. No one can multitask, and no one should.
I absolutely agree with you. It's the wrong thing to multitask.
I think a woman's desire is to be appreciated and be able to function, you know, in all the feminine sides and bring that to everything, you know. Of course you'll have some masculine sides too, but to be able to embody, no, not embody, that's not quite the right word, to actually carry out her I'm getting tied up with words now, her femininity, you know, to express it, to use it, to teach it, to because I think that also is what a man needs as well, a man or children or society. Full stop. It's, to me, the balance of power must be some feminine and some masculine. So I think that's why our great leaders usually always had a very strong woman behind them, you know, or beside them, not behind, beside them. Yeah.
Now that's
It's getting
great.
balance, and it shouldn't be a competition, you know. Both things are needed desperately, you know, in all circumstances.
Great observation, Julie. Thank you for that, because here's another really interesting thing about the timing of this discussion today, is that most of you would have witnessed this yesterday, was it yesterday, the day before, sorry, the night before, the lunar eclipse. Now, the lunar eclipse was that moment where the Earth was in the middle between the sun and the moon, which spiritually have the connection with male energy and female energy. And there we were in balance. And there's a lot of talk at the moment. I've just been watching or reading a book or watching a series of videos about the sixth age, the coming of the sixth sun. And that is, you know, if you look back historically through the eras of the Mayans and other cultures that had a strong affinity with astrology, the Egyptians, of course, and that study of the planets and their impact on the movements on us. You know, we've got the gravitational pull of the moon, and well-established scientific research showing this, where the word lunatic comes from, that when the moon is in a full state, that you know, all the loonies come out and people start doing crazy things and behaving very strangely and so on. Affected, I think there's plenty of evidence. Ask any police officer and they'll tell you there's a lot of incidents that go on. And yet this week we've had balance. And so there's a lot of talk about how, you know, things go through different cycles and generations. We have the cycle now of the emerging and balance of the feminine age coming into restoring that balance and putting the masculine and feminine energies in harmony so that we can go forwards and evolve to the next level. So very interesting spiritual timing that we should be reading this particular chapter. And like Julie just said, that we need both male and female energies and the strengths and the weaknesses that those things bring with them. And as if by magic, we have Carly appearing at that moment to join us as well, who for me, Carly embodies this whole concept of bringing that feminine energy and that spiritual side into the debate. So Carly, did you hear anything of what just was being said before? I was just talking about we were talking about the balance between the summary. I said you could sum up this whole chapter, or chapter 11, with man's greatest motivating force, this one sentence, is his desire to please woman. So I was asking all the ladies, what is it that motivates women? And we're talking about the timing of this conversation being, we had the lunar eclipse, that male energy and female energy are aligned. We're coming into this new era. Did you want to share any wisdom on that one?
All right. What's your specific question for me? Because none of that feels like a question.
Doesn't it? Okay. What do women want?
Okay. You could have that question, but I'm going to put it out to all the women. What do they want? Because what I want is a personal thing for me. So what do you really want to know?
Well, the question is if man's greatest motivating force is to please women, then what is women's greatest motivating force?
I think it's an individual question for each person on here, because I can't answer for anyone else. I've got my own unique desire for why I'm on the earth, but my connection to the feminine, and like every woman here and man, is our power to create, which is what I'm assuming you have already discussed. And so really that's all we want. We just want to create what it is that is our passion, that our soul wants us to experience while in a physical body. Once we go into our spiritual, back into our spiritual body, we're going to be having a different experience. We're not physically we're not in a physical body with all those senses. So I guess tapping into the feminine, yes, men are here to also create. But between us in a marriage of yin and yang coming into harmony, into balance internally, all we're doing is mirroring each other until we master the shadow aspects of our dark and light shadows, our golden shadow, mastering that in the physical to become God walking in a body. And if you don't want to call it God, the energy or consciousness of the universe that can just create just from the imagination, because we're tapped into our feminine presence. And when we're tapped into our feminine presence, we already are the universe. We just have to listen to our intuition and it creates. It's instant. And we do it all the time. We just don't recognize it's a full-on thing we do constantly, because we do. We do it with thinking of someone and they ring, which is a simple one, but we do it in whatever unconscious, subconscious thoughts going on. We constantly do it. Like I blob into other people's thoughts all the time and then think they're mine, because I'm not aware enough in my full presence, which the feminine is full eternal presence when you're in your feminine. The masculine is that conjoining of consciousness and feminine presence, creating in the moment. Does that help?
That's brilliant, Carly. That really is brilliant. You've actually summed up quite a few of the points that are raised in this chapter. I'll just go on to one that's come out of that, which I've written this down. He talks about sex desire. So he goes on to say there's three main things: sex, love, and romance. All right. Sex desire, men develop keenness, by men, in this case, I think we can say people, all right, develop keenness of imagination, courage, willpower, persistence, and creative ability. So when he talks about the examples of literature, the arts, all professions, and including the mastery or attainment or acquisition of wealth and riches, that all of these things can be transmuted from sex desire. So in other words, if we have this desire, whether it's sex, romance, or love, we can use that power, that motivating force that drives us to really freely connect with our full ability to express ourselves in all of those areas. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, when you were talking there, like the I call it the middle pillar, but the conduit between heaven and earth, the universal mother is the universe as well, not just the earth. When we're connecting to the source energy of whatever you want to call it, name it, when you're further back in the body and back into your sacral, right into near the spine, you're in full alignment with the creative power of the universe. When you're in your sex energy and you're actually having sex, and if you're not aware, you're probably, well, I'm stating, further into the front of the body, not the back of the body. Like, depending on where you are, like for a woman, we're probably more in the center to the back of the body, depending on how tapped in, because as soon as you take it into your mind, having sex, you've left the source of eternal feminine. You've become into the physical, into the mind concept of sex. Does that make sense? So yeah. You're more in the front of the body, and you don't want, well, you want to be in the front of the body, but you want to also be in the back of the body and the center. Don't you want the power of the whole universe in your sacral?
Now that's a great point, and going back to something that Julie said that you might not have heard is that we're all about balance. And when I asked the question before, I think it was Coralie that said that we all want everything. Like women want everything as well. We want harmony. We want balance. So I think when you look at the context of when this book was written, in that it was at a time when it was a man's world, let's call it that for you know what I mean, that. Therefore, if we put it in modern day vernacular, we can actually substitute, instead of the word man, we could put people, because this applies to men and women. I think this humanity is seeking this balance, and it goes on to say that and again, I'll use the word men because this is the quote, the men who have accumulated great fortunes and achieved outstanding recognition in literature, art, industry, architecture, and the professions were motivated by the influence of a woman. Now, if you were to say that people were influenced by or motivated by the influence of all of us, all people, I think we're all after that balance. So, but when we can tap into that desire for that balance, for love, for romance, for sex, then we can achieve greater things than what we could without it.
Yeah, and a lot of it is us, humanity, believing it's an outsourced thing. The man has sex with the woman, and the feminine and the masculine energy meet, but we have both. So it's actually us coming back into our power in our body, sitting further back and down, and just tapping into the full connection and sovereignty of that from the heart down and the heart up. Like, so it's not about sex. It is about sex if you want it to be, but really we have our own power. We don't need to outsource it from any other human being.
Well, he goes on to say that is a superpower for action. So if we can, I think if we can put that into the modern day context, that if we can achieve harmony of the male and female spiritual energies, then we can tap into that superpower.
Yeah, and the superpower is in us already.
Yeah.
And so
I would, oh, finish, Kelly.
no, I'm finished.
Feel free to push disagree or in any way, or
No, I would agree with that. Look, I think because part of the chapter also talks about, because again, it uses the term man, but it really is people. If they can get past that sexual urge or desire and place it elsewhere, that to me is when creativity happens. So some of the great artists, musicians, writers, I think when they were able to do that and they got in the flow, is it just a way that I'm going to term it? Think of some of the great things that were created. The music, the art, the writing. Think of all the great authors. I think a lot of time they spent on the creativity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the one that popped into my brain when I was reading this morning was the Glenn Miller story. I don't know if you've ever watched that movie.
Yes, I have.
Beautiful
yes.
movie, tracing the life of Glenn Miller and how he came to become the great band leader of the sort of the war era. That he was very, very motivated by his love for and his pursuit of the lady who became his wife, and that she was alongside him, supporting him all the way, so that he could fully tap into that creative talent and become, a sort of a motivational force for people fighting the war. That they had this fantastic music that would, sort of bounce them along. Yeah, so there's so many stories when you look through literature and the arts. So it's the whole thing about transmutation is transforming that energy and applying it to somewhere where it can really be a conduit to the higher consciousness, to tap into that creative capability that we all have. So instead of being distracted by the base element, shall we say, or they say that an average man thinks about sex. Is it something like 15 times a day, or is it every 15 minutes?
Oh, I think it's more than that. That's the number's much higher than that.
Every 15 minutes, the thought of sex comes into a man's mind. Try running a backpackers. I can tell you, it comes in probably a lot more often than that. So another quote here: the 10 stimuli of the mind. 1 was a desire for sex expression. 2, love. 3, burning desire for fame, power, or financial gain, or money. 4, music. 5, friendship, either with the same sex or opposite. 6, a mastermind alliance. 7, mutual suffering. 8, autosuggestion. 9, fear, and 10, narcotics and alcohol. Now, obviously, a couple of those are not really 15 times an hour. Wow. Some of those.
That's what I thought.
That makes more sense, to be honest.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think we can safely say it's a lot. But if we can not get distracted by that, and we can handle that, we can tap into this creative consciousness. And he goes on to say, definition of a genius: a man, we'll say a person, who has discovered how to increase the intensity of thought to the point where he can freely communicate with sources of knowledge not available through the ordinary rate of thought. So by tapping into that balance, that harmony, sex, love, and romance, and using that energy, that opens up the floodgate, so to speak. It opens up the channel of communication with your higher consciousness, whatever you call it, God, the universe, whatever it is to you.
A question actually I would like to ask everybody, because love to me is not just about a love for whoever your spouse, partner, whatever, and it could be male or female, it doesn't really matter. To me, it's also just love of other people.
Yeah.
Love of community, love of nature, animals, whatever. So I think, to me, love can be more general than how it's being talked about in this chapter.
Yes.
I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
I agree. And I think that's the context of the age that this was written. That's why we've got to bring this book into our modern era and update it, so to speak, for how we perceive the world now, because we've got a different set of rules, different zeitgeist going on to what they had back then. You know, if you look at his other book, Outwitting the Devil, he wasn't even allowed to publish that. His wife said, there's no way you're publishing that, because they would have been banned from the church and all sorts. This would have been heresy, you know, they'd have been stoned or something. So it's quite controversial when you think about it in its historical context of when this was written. Julie, you're muted if you're trying to speak.
I find this really quite interesting, because if you think throughout the ages that priests and in many cultures, you know, in India and in Hindu, all sorts of different cultures were encouraged or banned with the Catholic Church from having, you know, a sexual relationship or a relationship with the other sex, you know. And that was interesting because that was seen to transmute, shall we say, the energy that they should be, you know, using towards the divine. So this is an interesting, yeah, I just wonder what people are thinking of that too, you know, and the problems it caused, you know, by doing that, or making it a rule, or making it that you couldn't be a true, you know, godly person, or, you know, like prophet or anything, if there was, you know, sex in your life. So they locked up monasteries or whatever. It's just interesting. It's part of the same sort of, the belief system around this is very.
Well, there was a sense historically that that chasing the opposite sex was, you know, that lust was a sin, and that it was against the teachings of God, shall we say. And yet, obviously, there's a need for it to take place, or humanity isn't recreated. You know, we don't have another generation if there isn't any sex. So it's kind of has to happen. But I think the point, yeah, like that Julie's just made there, is that when you're allowing that to dominate your life, if your whole thrust is about procreating, or, you know, the physical fun element of it, then that was distracting from the greater cause, supposedly serving humanity. I actually thought when you mentioned that about Genghis Khan, you know, it was there's a theory that the vast majority of us on the world today in some way related back to Genghis Khan, because he made it his business to go and impregnate women all over, everywhere he conquered. He was trying to scatter his seed, shall we say, and leave his mark on the world, because you know,
he probably did.
Well, I think he thought he was connected to some sort of divine consciousness, and that the more Gengises, little Gengises out there, the better.
Yeah, what was he trying to control there? Like, to be the, you know, why do you need to be the best? Why did he need to be the best in that situation? And you know, all those thoughts of needing sex every 15 minutes for men, why are they outsourcing women's energy when they've got their own? And yes, evolution. And where is their heart in that connection of every 15 minutes? Obviously, they're nowhere near their heart if they're stuck in their mind every 15 minutes. Like, that means they've cut themselves off from the heart. You know what I mean? Like, they've cut their heart energy off. Because what would you, Tony, when you're keen to have an intimacy with your wife, be all in your mind, or would you be in your heart, mind and body in the desire to be with your wife? It's nothing to do with your mind, just want. You know, where's your power gone in that situation? And why would you want to create from just one part of your power that's actually becomes an addiction? Why would you not want to create and create evolution from the full heart, body, mind, energy field that equals your wife?
Well, you just nailed it, because we are seeking that which is missing. So think about the movie Jerry Maguire. I'm coming up with some movies today. You Complete Me. Where does that come from? That is that we are looking for the bits in us that are missing. So if we don't have that harmony, that balance, we're seeking it externally, when, as you say, it should be in the heart. It's there internally. We just have to tap into it.
And it's like any habit. Like, I'm pretty sure your 15 minutes was 20 minutes a month ago, and 30 minutes 3 months ago, and a year ago, maybe once an hour. Like, you know what I'm saying? It becomes this habit, a mental habit, like any habit of any kind that we're trying to shift from, or we create more of.
I've got it right up to at least 30 seconds now, that, you know, it's only every 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it. But
I'm just giving that as an
I'm
example.
slowing down
That
as
could
I
be
get older. It's true though, when you think back, because he asks you to actually reflect back on your life. Now, Joe's abandoned us, so Stan, you're the only other guy on the call here, I think, today. So so we're under pressure here. Think back to, in your life, has not the desire to please women been one of your greatest motivating forces? I know it has for me.
And that's perfect, because that is one of men's greatest desires. It really is.
Yeah.
And women are the nurturer, and then it just somehow beautifully envelopes each other. And if you've got great communication, if you haven't, then there's a disconnect, and then your mind starts getting involved. If you've got great communication in that scenario, you co-create and support each other in your inner nature desire, which yours is to support women, to, you know, to.
But I can only speak for me here, but I know that in a lot of the reading that I've done, and particularly in the last year since the COVID lockdown, that's when it all began like to accelerate for me. I've always been a reader. I've always been into personal development for many years, and obviously becoming a coach as well. So I feel fairly confident in saying I'm fairly in touch with my feminine side, but I found myself reading a lot more female authors in the last year, and particularly really connecting in a big way with that. People like Brene Brown and you know, so on, that talked a lot about that balance and that harmony, and dealing with some of those emotions that are quite destructive, you know, as he mentions in here, you know, like fear and greed and guilt and shame and humiliation, all those sorts of things that drag us down. So I think we've taken today a very much more modern look at this chapter, and a very much a spiritual interpretation that it's about this balance and harmony that, you know, substitute people for men in the context of this, you know, when it was written, and say that if we can get that harmony, this is where he comes to a definition of a genius, where the man has discovered how to increase the intensity of thought to where he can freely communicate with sources of knowledge not available, that the genius is then developed through the sixth sense. The sixth sense is creative imagination. So the more we can become in tune internally within ourselves, the more we can tap into our ability to use creative imagination, therefore to create whatever we want, our ideal life, our acquisition of wealth, our desire to surround ourselves with positive, like-minded people. All of those things can be acquired more easily and more effectively by tapping into creative imagination. And that's achieved through finding that inner balance and inner harmony. So it leads us on nicely to the next chapter, which is about the power of the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind, as he calls it, the connecting line, the 11th step towards riches. So he talks about it that the subconscious acts first on the dominating desires which have been mixed with emotional feelings such as faith. Now, if your dominating desires are off chasing skirt every 5 minutes, so put it that way for want of a better expression, then you're not really focused and in tune and in alignment where you're going to put yourself in that position to be a genius and use your creative imagination. So that the subconscious mind is always at work. It doesn't sleep, so to speak. Even when our conscious mind is asleep, our subconscious mind is whirring away. And so if we can, tapping back into the chapter on desire and how to harness the power of desire and so on, that we can plant in our subconscious mind the seeds of what we want it to be working on. You know, just in the same way we talked about how you're trying to think of a movie title, what was the name of that actor or the name of that movie title, and, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning you wake up and the answer is popping in your head because your subconscious mind has been going back, searching through all the file paths and so on, trying to find the answer to the question, and it's given you the answer. So we know that that works. If we can apply that to better questions like, well, how will I accumulate great wealth then? The subconscious mind goes whirring away trying to come up with the creative solutions for you. But if we're planting rubbish in there, what are we going to get? Weed, fear, self-doubt.
Garbage in, garbage out in bookkeeping terms.
Exactly.
Same with that, I'd imagine.
He says you cannot entirely control your subconscious mind, but you can voluntarily hand over to it any plan, desire, or purpose which you wish transformed into concrete form. Any thoughts on that? Any other pickups from this chapter?
I just want to put out that because I saw Kelly wrote about affirmations and I think something else I didn't see. I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the chat. That would help actually.
Stating intentions, it says.
Oh,
Kelly.
Yes, thank you. I also would say that I use visualization and visioning because I'm a very visual person. So if I imagine and I put all the senses into it and I see it in my mind, it eventually comes true. So I think it depends on what works for people. So you remember in the beginning, we were talking about some people are more word oriented or auditory, others are visual, and some are a mix of both. But I think you need to have all the feelings, all the senses in there to help bring it to fruition, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just something I'd add.
As a coach, as a coach, when I've done work with NLP, you know, neuro-linguistic programming or patterning, some of the exercises we do with clients, when you're trying to get them to create more of a desired future, and they're trying to let go of some issue that's been holding them back, and you're trying to get them to move forward, you know, unobstructed by that issue, you bring to bear as many of the senses as you can. So you'll get them to close their eyes and see what they want in their mind's eye, and bring in all the other senses, you know. So let's say, for instance, they're imagining themselves going on a holiday in this beautiful beach resort. So you're going to get them in a position where you're asking them to imagine themselves walking along the beach, hearing the sounds of the waves lapping on the shore, feeling the breeze on their face, smelling the sea air. So you're bringing, you know, the taste in your mouth of the saltiness of the air. See, the more you can bring in all of those senses, the more you can actually bring that person into feeling what it would be like to have created that situation, which of course now we can do with artificial intelligence, or, you know, with these screens you can put, masks you can wear, where you can actually, like, you play some of these video games and it's like actually feels like you're there in the action. Well, you're doing that with your subconscious mind to help you program the future, the desired success that you want. And by doing that, you tap into the creative imagination potential of actually then, that your mind then goes and seeks the answers to how do I make this happen? Stunned silence.
Everybody's just staring at the screen.
Yeah. Okay, so he goes on to say that the 7 major positive emotions. Now, Tony Robbins talks about, rather than positive and negative, he talks about empowering or disempowering, which I thought was an interesting distinction. But let's go with what he said here. Positive emotions: desire, faith, love, sex, enthusiasm, romance, and hope. That when we live with those as our dominating thoughts or our dominating feelings, we will be more likely to make happen the things that we want to happen. When we get trapped into the opposite, these 7 major negative emotions, as he calls them, to be avoided: fear, jealousy, hatred, revenge, greed, superstition, and anger. Now, superstition being different to rituals, that there's a distinction we can make there. That the power of rituals has been long used by humanity as a form of anchoring our thoughts, of association of concepts. So you know, and superstition was often used in a negative sense. Superstition was often used to explain the inexplicable, you know, for primitive man to not understand the science of what's going on, because they didn't have access to that information and knowledge that we do today, and that, you know, going forward another couple of 100 years we'll have even more, hopefully, if we haven't destroyed ourselves by then, that we would have a greater understanding of the scientific part of why things are the way they are in the world. So, but look at those negative emotions there: hatred, revenge, greed, anger. Aren't those all the things that destroy us, that cause wars, that cause conflict, that cause disharmony? And yet if we focus on the positive ones: desire, faith, love, sex, enthusiasm, romance, hope, we become the better versions of ourselves, and humanity is able to move forward and achieve its aspirations. Any thoughts on all that?
Give us a question.
Okay.
It was a question. Any thoughts? We're all
All right,
thinking we
okay.
don't have any comments.
So
We're in our presence. We don't have thought.
that's all right. I'll give you the next thing that I highlighted after those that came up was positive and negative emotions cannot occupy the mind at the same time. One or the other must dominate. It is your responsibility to make sure that positive emotions constitute the dominating influence of your mind. Here, the law of habit will come to your aid. Form the habit of applying and using the positive emotions. Eventually, they will dominate your mind so completely that the negatives cannot enter it. Now, as I said, I believe I like Tony Robbins' definition slightly better, that distinction of, is it positive or is it empowering? Is it negative or is it disempowering? I think when we have a negative thought or a disempowering thought come into your mind, ask yourself, is it serving me to think about this situation this way, or is it disempowering me? And when you look at that, you go, well, which of these emotions am I tapping into when I'm holding that thought or that state of mind? So let's just say, for instance, I take a tangible example for you. You get some news on Facebook or wherever. One of your friends is off traveling the world. Let's say, oh, it might be Tony next week on the Cocos Islands. Are people going to be going, that bugger, he's off traveling and enjoying himself? Are you going to feel jealous and angry about it? And why isn't it me? It's not fair. He gets to go on holiday all the time. I don't get to go. What's going on here? Do you tap into that? Or do you go, good on him, I'm going to go there next year, or I'm going to go to somewhere else that's, you know, pleasing to me? Are you going to have jealousy or fear? Well, what if I can't ever raise the money? I'll never get to go traveling anywhere. I'm not good enough. You know, those sorts of things. So
No, I got to say, I didn't.
Tangible example here for you to play around with.
I didn't tap into that. I tapped into, shit, I want to go and do that stuff. I thought, you are such a grace-filled person, you and Joe. You're always going on these fantastic holidays. I want that. I want that. I tapped into, I'll say envy, because I want that. But it's not envy. It's because it's something I'm like, I would love that.
Right.
Inspiration.
And
Yes.
it's inspiring.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, if you can do that even in the middle of COVID, then there's hope for the rest of us. Like, we could all do that. Like, we could all enjoy life even though shit's going on.
Now, let's be
Like-
honest. I've got to ask you, here's a question for you, Carly. You want a question? I'll give you a question.
Give me a question.
We've all seen pictures of Martin and Beth off enjoying themselves in the great Australian outback in the last few, I'm sure every one of us has seen pictures of that on Facebook.
Yeah.
Is there a moment when your brain
Yes,
goes,
there is.
buggers, I'm so envious of them, or jealous
There
of them
is.
doing that? And then do you grapple with that and go, get a grip? No, be pleased for them. Isn't that awesome? I'm going to do
Yes.
that as well. So do you see the dilemma that we have as human beings? We cannot help but be hit with that momentary, buggers, that's me, I want to be doing that.
Yeah,
And
but
that kind of jealousy and envy.
it's not all of us. I think because as we master and understand we can all have that, and our body gets on board with that, our subconscious understands from all of our lack patterning from the family lineage, gets on board while we're mastering it, while we're in our physical body. Hopefully we pass that energy on to our children, and they witness that as well as feel it. And so we're just mastering the understanding that we can have whatever we witness, we just don't fully embody the knowing of that yet. That's the only reason why we get a bit envious or jealous. I mean, I've done exactly what Martin and Beth are doing when I was in my 30s, late 20s. So I've done all that, but I still went, oh God, I wish I could still do that. Like, God, because I loved it. I loved doing what they did. I didn't have kids. It was freedom. I could just go wherever I wanted in Australia, and I did. I went inland, outland, like outback, everywhere. So they're doing my journey. So I'm re-witnessing it through their photos. And there's a part of me that wishes I was there doing that.
Absolutely. And I'm the same. So I've had both. I've had that momentary, oh, you know, that's like, I'm stuck here doing this paperwork or whatever, you know, I could be out there doing that. But I've done that stuff too. You know, I have a life I'm very blessed to have lived. I've been and traveled to lots of places that I've set my mind to go there, and I've made it happen.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. We can either tap into and fall victim to the disempowering thought of, oh, well, why me? Why not me? Why haven't I done that? Oh, maybe I'm not good enough. And all those, like, you can spiral down through the negative downward emotions into believing that you're not good enough or you can't do it. Or you can go be inspired and go, well, how can I do that then? What's my plan to make that happen? And that's where you could, by asking better questions, you can tap into the creative imagination as to finding ways of making you being able to achieve your life desires, whatever they may be.
Yeah. And like, I'm not joking. Well, I shouldn't say joking. The energy I received traveling Australia like that, free like that, sent my heart into a connection to Mother Nature that you can't get just by sitting and talking to someone, or you can't get just by, you can get it when you go bushwalking or, you know, swimming in the ocean. But this is like continuous 24, it's like going camping. So anyone that's gone camping for a few days, you know how you just merge with Mother Nature, you're one with her, you're just so grateful you're able to breathe her. Well, when you're out in the middle of Australia like that, you're breathing her 24/7. And you don't have to, because they don't have to worry about children or family, they've only got to worry about themselves, feed themselves. Really, you don't even need money. Like you need the limitless amount of money. Like you could really have that much freedom. And so, because you could go volunteer and be fed, like, you know, you can go all through the middle of Australia, you can go and work and just make money helping farms. So like you can do woofing. Like, I'm talking freedom at its ultimate.
Woofing, for those who don't know the term, means working on outback farms.
Oh, it means wheeling workers on organic farms. And
Right.
so with you know, those organic farms, like they feed you, you work for them for a few hours a day, 4 hours, and then they feed you and give you accommodation. And there's no money exchange. There's just fed and work, and you can live like that, and you move around to all different farms. Anyway, I'm off track. Around Australia, and then you can do it in New Zealand, and you can do it in Switzerland and wherever. Obviously, you're not going to do it with COVID. Anyways, but it's the connection to that. It's that internal connection to the limitless possibility, because from that energy, you can ask and create anything. So that's why it's so important to be connected to our internal body, Mother Earth, and really breathe her in and be her breath, because every breath has an opportunity.
And that is why I love traveling so much, because when I go traveling and I connect with that vastness, that limitless possibility that you just mentioned, that's when I really tap into my creative side. And that's when I come up with the ideas. I come back from every holiday either nearly having bought a business or come up with a new idea about how to start a new business or to develop the business I've already got, or, you know, I come up with all these different inspired thoughts because I've put myself in a place, in a state of mind where I'm disconnected from all the stuff that gets in the way of that creativity. When you're bogged down with the detail of everyday life, how am I going to pay that bill? Or what about, you know, the car needs a service next week, all the kids, you know, all those sorts of things that you've got going on in your day-to-day world. When you escape all that and you step out into the vast possibility of nature, then you can tap into that creative conscious. I mean, if you can't go on a holiday in the middle of outback Australia, you can start with going out into your own garden and looking at the sky at night and looking at how many stars are up there and seeing what a vastness we have, that we're just a blip. So then you put the scaling impact on that of how significant are these things that you're worrying about, these problems that you have day to day, how much do they really matter when all's said and done? Well, you get other things he mentions about, you know, with, like, say, disasters or shared suffering. You imagine a community where, for instance, where the bushfire's been through and it's wiped out all the buildings, these people have lost everything and they're starting again with nothing. Or refugees that go from one country and start a new life in another country, and they start with literally the clothes on their back. You're having a blank slate from which to go and create a whole new set of possibilities. So you can either focus on the loss and the devastation of what you don't have, or you can focus on the infinite possibilities that await you. So that leads on to the last interesting, significant point that I want to bring. So I'm aware that we're on time now, like coming up for time. The subconscious mind is the intermediary which translates one's prayers into terms which infinite intelligence can recognize, presents the message, and brings back the answer in the form of a definite plan or idea for procuring the object of the prayer. Now, if you don't believe in prayers or God, tapping into infinite intelligence, the universe. So there's one other key thing I wanted to highlight there, was that most people who pray do so only after everything has failed, and then go to prayer with their minds filled with fear and doubt, which are the emotions the subconscious mind acts upon and passes on to infinite intelligence. So it's no good going and asking, oh, you know, please let me get $1 million, please let me get $1 million, but actually I don't think I'm really deserving of it, and I don't really think I've got any idea how I'm going to make it, so it probably won't happen. That ain't going to work, right? If you can instead tap into your strengths, your abilities, your creative self, and you ask instead, I am good enough, how can I, okay, how can I, if somebody else has done it, how can I go about getting that? How can I make it happen? What do I need to do? And you put that into your subconscious mind with a belief, I will find the way, I've just got to figure out the way I'm going to get there. I need the plan, but I can do it. I can do this. So if you're praying or tapping into the universe, whatever you want to call it, with an empowering base or foundation, then that framework for the subconscious mind is going to create that conduit to the creative imagination, and you'll get back from the infinite source the answers that you need to make it happen. That's how you create your ideal life, which is why I've called the mastermind that, creating your ideal life. So it's about that, tapping into that universal power, but it comes from within. It starts with you. You have to achieve self-mastery over those negative thoughts, those negative emotions that come up. Anyone else want to share any thoughts on that before we close?
Yes, I'm having a day of negative thoughts.
Okay, let's stop. Let's play the coach for a second. How is stating you're having a day of negative thoughts empowering you? Is that an empowering statement?
Not
or
at all.
empowering statement?
Not at all. Not at all.
That's actually an empowering statement.
Oh, okay. Go on, Carly.
Yeah,
I
because
thought I had to share it. I just had
Yeah.
to, because I've been sitting on it the whole morning and night, and I've had pains in my back, and you know.
Julie, is there a specific thought? Like while you're listening to this stuff, is there a specific thought that keeps coming that you want to own with the group?
I think it's no, not really. Just how can you switch? Boom, because that's what I want to do. It's so uncomfortable, and so
that's your question. How do I switch? How do I switch my thought into a positive?
Yeah.
How do I change the embodiment of my thought so that my subconscious starts to accept it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does anyone else want to chime in on what they do to switch their thought into an embodied consciousness? Like what practices do you, I know Vicky, you probably got one you mentioned before as well.
I have a lot that I do.
Well,
for me, honestly,
what comes to mind specifically so Julie can take it with her?
I just choose myself to change that thought. So if I have a negative, I switch it around and I make it a positive. Or I take a walk in nature, or I go paint. Like you see my paintings behind me. That's what switches it, because getting into creative mode, whatever that is, happens for me. It's painting or something like that. It could be something different for you, Julie. It changes your mindset. Now, maybe if you're in pain, you don't want to go for a walk, but there are times that I've been in pain that being out in nature was like the key element. As soon as I'm out and I can see trees and flowers and hear birds, I forget that I had pain because I'm concentrating on nature. So that's just something I do.
That's great, Vicky. And Stan's put a comment in the box there that awareness is your first step. Now reframe it.
And then owning it verbally, because this is a safe container. So just like I owned about my desire to do what Martin's doing, you just owned, you've got these thoughts going on. then you're getting answers from people that are practicing the same thing, because you're not actually alone in that, Julie. We all have
No.
so we're all mastering to flip it into what we really want. So if you keep asking the question, actually, what do I really want? When you're aware, like Stan's saying, you're aware of the thoughts, you get aware of them, then you go, hang on, what do I really want? What thought do I really want? Just ask that. And then ask from your heart. And then when you decide from your heart what you really want to think, start feeling that way. Or like Vicky's saying, go into nature, it grounds you. That's the difference. When you're grounded, you're out of your mind as much. The thoughts start to soften.
I have done a lot of these things, and during the night, of course, it's always a little bit trickier, but I did the breathing. I breathed into the pain. And, you know, that helped a bit. Took some painkillers too, that helped as well. But,
Julie, can I ask you, what's your body telling you when you're waking up feeling stiff and uncomfortable?
I kind of felt like it was telling me it's tired, and I need to just sort of let go of all the huge expectations I've got about what I should be doing and not doing enough. You know, those feelings, it's never enough. So don't know really.
Can I make another suggestion? Have you tried listening to some sort of meditation, whether it's well, binaural wave type music? There's lots of stuff out there you can listen to that it just changes how you feel. Or it does for me.
Yeah.
The other thing is movement. You know, if you've been lying in bed and you're stiff and sore and uncomfortable, I'd put it to you that your body's also probably saying you need to move. You need to get out. So if you get outside and go for a walk in nature, you're answering your body's call for movement. That relieves the stiffness. I've certainly experienced that. The last thing I wanted to do is go out on the walk with the dog. I just want to sit in the armchair because I'm feeling stiff and uncomfortable. I'll get up, go for the walk with the dog, and 20 minutes later, I'm feeling on top of the world. I'm walking through nature. I'm moving. We're meant to move. We're not meant to sit around doing nothing. And at the same time, my creative mind's going into all the possibilities about, you know, whatever the problem is that I'm dealing with, or whatever the associations of the pressures and everything that you're feeling will dissipate with that movement and with that connection with nature. And then you'll start coming up with the ideas of how you can change the situation.
Yes, and normally on Friday morning I go off to Nia dance, which is something I love, and it's a struggle sometimes, you know, really struggle. Up and downstairs are a struggle for me, and up and downstairs all the time during the day, and but I couldn't do it this morning. I just couldn't get any energy up, so I have to go with that a little bit too, I think.
Well, sometimes you need to listen to your body and take that rest and relaxation if that's what's required.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the other times you just have to be kind to yourself and just like you're doing, acknowledging that you're feeling sad, and just try and breathe and stay in the moment and try not to wallow in it. It's very, very hard when you're sore and tired all the time. I get it.
Yeah, I'm not wallowing in it. It's just
I'm not saying that you are.
I know you won't. I know.
Yeah, so you might not have came out. Quite right.
Sometimes to just release it.
Yeah,
release it. Exactly. Let it go. Let it go. Use the power of breathing as well, as was said. So breathe in and out, and close your eyes and focus on how you want it to be instead.
Yeah.
And let go of any of the negative stuff that's tying you or holding you back.
I nearly didn't come on for this reason, but I'm glad I didn't.
We're glad you did, Julie.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm glad you came.
And thank
sometimes
you
just need to phone a friend, as they say.
And that's isn't that so true for all of us? I know there's been times when I was like, oh, do I really want to go on that call? And that's the call I need to be on. And when I'm on it, I go, now I know why I was on this call, why I was meant to be here. There's that thing, that one gem or that one gold nugget that comes out of the call that you go, that's what I was there for. That's what I was meant to pick up. And if not for you, give your example to the group to go, yeah, I can relate to Julie. I've had days when I felt like that too. So we all get that. We all get the benefit of that gold nugget from that. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of the mastermind. Any last thoughts on these two chapters?
Yes, I just wanted to read this little bit. I don't think you read it, or if you did, I missed it.
Please do.
It's the Ella Wheeler Wilcox or something, whatever her name is. You never can tell what a thought will do in bringing you hate or love, for thoughts are things, and their airy wings are swifter than carry a dove. They follow the law of the universe. Each thing creates its kind, and they speed o'er the track to bring you back whatever went out from your mind. So that's true law of attraction, huh?
That's excellent, Julie. Thank you for that. And it's a lovely, lovely way to tie things up. So I hope you've all benefited from that. Now, just a quick reminder that I will be away on the Cocos Islands next week. Yay!
Enjoy.
We're not jealous. We're not jealous.
Enjoy.
Happy for you.
And I'll show you some photos. Last time I got to swim with a pod of 12 dolphins, which was absolutely life-changing, amazing moment. So,
Nice.
Ooh, and the water's warm.
the water is warm. It's some of the best diving in the world that I've ever done, to be honest. It's fantastic. So, and you see the picture of that's on the header of the Facebook group, Creating Your Ideal Life. That picture is from Direction Island, which is one of the Cocos Keeling Islands. Beautiful white sandy beaches, all the different colors of blue you can imagine in the ocean, palm trees overhanging the white sandy beaches. It is that sort of paradise, you know, that sort of vision that we have of what paradise would look like. So
I have experienced. You've just given me something to put my mind in right now.
excellent.
And that was when I was in Bali, and I just did my first bit of snorkeling in tropical waters, and I was just like a child that had just, you know, whatever. I just hung there, you know, and I just could not believe the beauty of this. And your body sort of just hanging. I thought, wow, it's so glorious. We used to feed the fish and get them chase us.
So Julie, when you're feeling tired and uncomfortable and stressed, bring that happy place,
Go there.
imagination. Bring it back into memory of how you felt when you were there doing that.
Gorgeous, yeah, will do.
That's powerful.
Thank you. That's
And
what
put-
reminded me.
And get a picture of it, print it out. You know, if you've got a photograph that puts you back in that place, and put it on your wall. And whenever you're feeling down and stiff and so like and weighed down by all the pressures of life, you can look at that thing and instantly take yourself back to that happy place and that positive, empowering feeling that you had in that. So that's anchoring you to an empowering and uplifting experience that you can then, it will lift your whole soul.
Thank you. I know all these things on a mental level. It's just that the emotional level is lagging today.
So haven't we all found, reading Think and Grow Rich, I know this stuff. We've just got to do it. Oh, yes, that's right. We have to put it into action as well. Now, the good news for you guys is while I'm off swanning around on the Cocos Islands, that gives you another week to catch up. So there will be a mastermind call next week that Vicky's going to host for us, so you can have a general topic discussion, whatever you want to talk about. But that will give those people who haven't caught up yet chance to catch up on the chapters that you've missed. And then we're going to do the next 2 chapters. I think there's only 3 left to go. So we'll be coming up to after that, where we do like a summary looking back on the lessons from the whole book. So please take that time to catch up, enjoy the book, enjoy the lessons that go along. There's all the recordings are there on the page if you want to go back and look through any that you might have missed, or, you know, just to refresh yourself at the points that people raised. Thank you all so much for your amazing contribution this morning. As ever, it's been an awesome discussion, and certainly, you know, I always get so much more out of these conversations as well than just reading the book itself. So thank you, everyone. Have an amazing week. Put all this stuff into action, and I'll see you in a fortnight if I don't catch you somewhere before on one of these masterminds.
Have a great vacation.
Yes,
Have
thanks,
a
Tony.
wonderful
Thank
time,
you.
Tony. Well
Joy.
deserved. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.